Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show you guys how to make a chainmail candle holder out of an old yogurt jar. Now you could use any kind of glass candle holder or like votive or just anything. With this design you're just going to want a little bit of a lip to keep it from sliding off the end. That way it can actually hang like so. These are those we like OUI yogurt jars that are pretty nice glass. Actually, I really like them for even just keeping crafts and stuff in, mixing paint, all sorts of different stuff. Very durable, great to upcycle. But we're going to start with this basic design, and if you guys are interested in future tutorials, please let me know down in the comments, because I'm going to be doing variations and more intricate versions of similar chainmail candle holder concepts, because camping season is upon us and I love bringing these to put little citronella candles in, as well as using as like incense burners, though there's not a whole lot of airflow through it, so whenever I'm using it as an incense burner, I'll often fill it like halfway up with sand or something just to bring that ember a little bit higher up. But you do you. It also absorbs the heat, so it's not stressing out the bottom. But let's get right to it. All of the tools and materials are listed down in the video description, but I'm also going to present them here. We have my favorite chainmail pliers. These are tapered or stepped flat nose pliers that I get from Rio Grande. And these are just some Amazon pliers that I had gotten. And I really like that it has like the squared jaw, because they take the brunt of the force when I'm working. But I modified the handle so that whenever I'm holding it, there's support for my pinky as well. And I did this using thermoplastic, and I actually have a tutorial from years and years ago in our crafting tutorial playlist. But you can use whatever pliers that you like. A lot of folks will just use 2 chain nose pliers or 2 flat nose pliers. I highly recommend this kit from American Chainmail. It has a wonderful sampling. If you've never worked with chainmail before, this is bright aluminum, which is very easy to work with, very affordable. And all of the ring sizes that I'm using to make this are in this kit. Now, if you're going to be making quite a few of these, I might recommend getting your rings by the pound from Chainmail Joe. Another supplier of bright aluminum that I really, really like. Very affordable, very high quality. And these are the 18 gauge and the standard wire gauge 3/16 internal diameter. And all of the gauges that I'm going to be speaking in terms of today are standard wire gauge. So that's just something that will probably be useful to you. But I'd like to emphasize, if you're watching this and you don't have the exact same ring sizes as me, that's perfectly okay. You could use a different ring size. It's just the number and maybe the spacing of some different things might need a little bit of tweaking. But you're a clever, crafty person. I think you can figure this out. And if you have any questions, just let us know down in the comments. So I'm going to open this up. We are going to begin by making the base of our candle holder here, like this metal part here that the hanger then attaches to. Also, if you like a little bit of color or want something other than bright aluminum, I do recommend shopping at theringlord.com. They have a great selection of different metal types, and they have some different colors of anodized aluminum that I've found to be really high quality. None of this is sponsored. This is just where I've shopped for the past like 12 years. So these are in all of my videos, I want to give you guys the advice I wish I had had when I was starting out, because it can be very overwhelming. Like, where do I get this from? How do you do that? And it could be seem simple to folks who've been doing it for a while, but you know, any way that I can help out, I try to. We're going to begin by opening our rings, and I am doing this in real time. Again, my heart is always with the beginner, so feel free if you just like jump to the end if you already know what you're doing, sort of stuff. But otherwise, buckle in for the long haul. But by the time the video is over, we should both have a completed candle holder. So I'm just coming through, opening up our rings, and I'm opening them. You want enough space that you'll be able to hook other rings into it, but you don't want it so wide open that you have to like kind of turn your hand funny and stuff. Like a full 90-degree open, you don't need that. Only about maybe a 45-degree angle. And we are going to open up 39 of these. If you are using the same exact rings as me, that's what I'm doing. If you're using something like stainless steel, it might have had a little bit of a spring back, so that even though it says 18 gauge 3/16, which is the ring size I'm working with now, sometimes manufacturers will label the rings based off of the mandrel they were made on as opposed to the final actual measure, so you may get some variation there as well. So to go around this yogurt jar, it's going to take me 39 units, which what I mean by that is I'm going to set up 39 of these open rings. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9, and 10. I'm going to do that a whole bunch, and it sounds like the mailman's here. The mailman's always here while I'm recording. The dogs may lose their mind. They're upstairs though, so it shouldn't be too loud. Well, okay, but I'm going to open up 39 like that, and then on each of those, what makes it a unit, as my partner and I call them, because like usually he'll help me with projects whenever we're like manufacturing for our booth, or we want to get a whole bunch of stuff made pretty quick. He'll be like, okay, what do you need? And I'll be like, I need 39 units of European 4-in-1, because that's the weave that I'm working with right now is going to be a European 4-in-1. And when I say unit, he knows to set up one of these open with 2 closed on each. So to close our rings, I'm just going to wiggle the ends together until they're lined up, because we want to make the ring look like there was never a little opening there. These are just butted rings, so I mean, they're not going to hold up to too much abuse, but if they're just hanging there or being used in jewelry, they do just fine. And so there's 1 and 2. This may not be the best project for if you're an absolute beginner at chainmail. I do have a tutorial that's like 5 easy chainmail earring designs, which even if you don't want them to be earrings, it's still a good practice video to kind of follow along with to build up your brain plier coordination and to get the hang of opening and closing rings, because that's something that through whichever chainmail weave that you're doing, for the most part, opening and closing the rings remains the same, so you have plenty of opportunity to practice and get the hang of it. So go slow and be gentle with yourself, and like just practice. You'll get there. Do not expect perfection directly from the beginning, but just do your best. Whoops. Sometimes that happens, that's okay. And so there are going to be 2 rings on every single one of these. And I know I just said I'm going to be doing it in real time, but I'm very tempted to, if you're watching along with this, pause me and build up the rest of your units, because I'm not going to force y'all to sit here through watching me do this 40 times. Well, 39, but you get me. So throw on something good to watch, and I will see you guys back here through the magic of editing whenever we get all 39 set up. Okay, so we have our ring set up, and I dropped my pliers on it, so they're a bit jumbled, but there's 39 here, and you'll notice this last ring has no closed rings on it. What we're doing with that is I'm going to be putting these 2 closed rings onto our first ring so that it is 1 open with 4 closed on it. Let's see if I can actually zoom in here to try to try to keep this focused and so that you can see what's going on. So that's our 4 rings on the one open, and then we are going to close it. So it looks like that. We're going to split this so that 2 rings are going off to either side. And do you see how they're kind of butterflied, kind of laying like this? That's what we're going for. You don't want it where it's like that, where it kind of didn't really look like anything. And you can actually set this on the table. And it doesn't matter which way it's facing. It could be facing like this. It could be facing like this. I have a little bit of a preference myself, being right-handed, to have it facing where this center ring is laying towards the right as opposed to laying towards the left. And the reason I prefer that is because of the direction that I open my rings in. I'm going to pick up another open that has the 2 closed on it. And you could, if you rather, not have the closed rings on there and we just have an open ring. But even with this laying on the table, I can just hook through one and then come up behind maybe the other. So if you can see, may I risk zooming in further? The more I zoom in, the more likely I am to wander out of frame, so be patient with me. See how that kind of has happened? And now I'm going to put on those 2 closed rings and close it. It's super tricksy here from the beginning because these rings kind of just become a jumble. You can see those are the 2 that we just added. If you're having problems with this, I do recommend checking out a European 4-in-1 beginner's chainmail tutorial because that should help you out. So these 2 rings right here and here, they're gonna just be a jumbly mess right now, no matter what we do. So if anything, just kind of ignore them if you can. Just ignore them, because as we keep weaving, so long as we're consistent with this, the pattern will emerge and then we'll be able to tidy those rings whenever we get to the end. So this is less of a European 4-in-1 tutorial as much as it is a how to make this project tutorial. So again, if you're having difficulty with the European 4-in-1, you may want to find a video that is about that specifically. But so we have our open ring with 2 closed on it, hooking through there. And if you find yourself ending up with this, that's not what we're going for right now. So I'm going to be hooking, coming in from the front and then coming up behind. The curve of the ring kind of lets itself catch in that area anyhow. And again, you can see that back there, jumbled mess. Just ignore it. Just focus on the ones you've most recently done. Oops. Because the pattern will start to establish itself. And then we're going to continue doing this pattern for all 39 units, making it a little bit bigger than if we were just making a bracelet. Because that's kind of, I started out as a jewelry designer. You know, I wanted to wear pretty rocks and started out with like bead stringing and then got into chainmail and then got into wire wrapping and then polymer clay, leatherworking, just everything kind of. I'm in love with learning new crafts, but chainmail was something that whenever I started moving from making just jewelry to making costumes as well, I kept viewing things as just bigger pieces of jewelry. You know, what's a, chainmail top, if not just a very, very big chainmail necklace that you put your arms through also. So whenever I started viewing things that way, it helped me to build 3-dimensionally. And that helps me with home decor stuff as well. Be like, what's this yogurt jar if not, about the size of a forearm? So right now we're just making the bracelet part. And I'm going to zoom back out because I don't want to keep wandering out of frame. And we're just going to continue picking up a unit, hooking it on and closing it. I'm hoping, if Future Vaughn edits this, don't let me down, Future Vaughn, there will be links in the video description, possibly. I wouldn't count on there being a card on the screen, I'm not going to lie. That's asking a bit much of Future Vaughn. But there will be links down in the video description to some chainmail tutorials that I've done that go into much greater detail on weaving a European foreign one with a bigger ring size, so hopefully that will be helpful to you. I always recommend to folks when you're learning a new design to maybe try 2 or 3 different metal tones, or quite possibly like use some anodized aluminum, and that way it can really, help. Oh, that one only has one closed on it. But it can really, help, at least for me when I'm teaching, to be like, okay, hook the blue ring through the 2 red rings. So if you find yourself getting overwhelmed, that may be a way to help yourself. Now also, if your piece gets turned over, it's perfectly fine. If you find yourself weaving like this, which might be your preference, we would just hook from the other side, which may actually be a little easier for you. It's much less about how we get there and more about getting there. If your closures are good, if the weave looks the way it's supposed to, then you did it right. I like to hear that little click whenever I put the ends of the rings together. And sometimes it can be really nice to practice both ways, just because you never know if you're working on a piece when it may be necessary. Like that's the only angle that you can approach the piece at because of how it's suspended, or, something of the sort. And so familiarizing yourself with all of the intricacies of how a weave can go wrong will just help you in troubleshooting further on down the line. So even if you're having a lot of difficulty with something, everything that you're doing to troubleshoot that, you're learning, you're gaining experience. So while I understand it can be very frustrating, you are doing yourself the favor of practice and learning. So, don't be afraid to set down the piece, walk away, take a bit of a break. But if you come back and keep tackling it, you will figure it out. You will overcome that difficulty, and you will be making some pretty epic chainmail. Or if you totally hate it and it's not for you, we do sell stuff on our website that's already woven, so we can hook you up. But I enjoy weaving chainmail, and I hope that you find some joy in it as well. It reminds me very much of knitting, but instead of doing, knits and purls, each stitch is one of these units. So I hook it on and then close it, and then hook it on and close it. Now, if you're using a ring size different than the one that I'm using, or if you're working on a glass piece that is not the same as what I'm using, to test fit, we would just drape this over our jar. And then you can kind of look and see and be like, okay, it's roughly about this many, I need maybe 2 inches more. And you could even get, a complete weave made, a segment like this, and then measure it and see how much, how many units is an inch. And you can kind of measure that out and then be like, okay, it's about 5 units, so I need 20 more, or 10 more. Big math. And so we can kind of, that's usually not what people want to hear when they're like, how much, or how do I determine how much I should weave? It's like, well, you weave a bunch and then you try it on, and if it's too small, you make it bigger, and if it's too big, you make it smaller. That's how I go about it, at least. There may be folks out there who have it refined down to a science, but I'm kind of just bumping into things here. But it's okay. You don't have to know what you're doing to get it done. There we go. just a few more rings now, and I'm going to show you guys how I join the ends together. So there we are, hooking on there, closing the rings. Chainmail is a perfect kind of project for whenever you're watching a very interesting show, or if you're just sitting around hanging out with friends. It's very conducive to a knitting circle type situation where we can just sit and shoot the breeze. So we have that woven. It is indifferent at this point, unless you're doing like a color inlay. It doesn't matter which way you thread this around your cup, but we want to make sure that there's no twists in it. And then we're going to come to the end and make sure that our rings are laid correctly so that they look like they're in line with the pattern. There we are. I'm going to bump the tripod a bunch, but also try to zoom in just a little bit more. So we have just our one open ring. I'm going to start by coming in under these two. So there's under that one and through that one. And you want to tug on it and make sure that it stays, that you did weave through correctly. Anytime that you put pressure, the chainmail, will kind of expose itself if it's correct or not. And then I'm going to hook through just as if I were adding a new unit. So there's through one, and there's through another. That can be sometimes very tight and very tricky, but I do err on the side of making my patterns just a little bit looser as opposed to it fitting perfectly snug. And this is where I absolutely love these finer tipped pliers, is because I can get in those tight spots and bring that ring together to closed. And you know you did it right whenever you spin it and you cannot tell where the use began and where you ended. So now, and you can see that slid down. There's quite a bit of movement there, but as we go through and add these little pennants of like little triangles hanging down, that kind of shrinks it just a little bit. So, and then also whenever we add these rings up here to make the chain coming up, that shrinks it a little bit too. So again, I'd always rather have just a little bit of, and then also with the design, it's going to be hanging, so the weight of the jar will bring it down. Okay, next step is to start the little triangles. And I do a pattern on this one of 4 skipping one. I'll show you on this one because it's already there. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 was what the triangle size that we had made. You can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I skipped one. And then I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I skipped one, and that way I have a little bit of space in between each of the pennants. So I just alternate 4, 5, 4, 5, and there are 6 triangles in total. So I'm going to show you 2 ways of doing these triangles. The first way is very beginner friendly, I think. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, open, and then the next row I'm going to do 3 because I'm just setting up here. So there's 1, 2, and 3, and then our next row is going to just be 2, 1, 2, and then our last row is going to be just 1. And so we can pick anywhere, doesn't matter, we just pick a spot and begin weaving. So I'm going to pick up 1 ring and hook through 1, 2, just there on the side like that. And I do like to work just with my jar sitting on the table. And I'm actually going to be messy and shoot that off to the side. That way I can stay in frame. So we've added 1 ring through 2 right there. I'm going to, again, try to zoom in. Hopefully this doesn't go horribly wrong. And then I'm going to hook through one that we had already hooked through plus another, and I'm going to close it. So there's two. I'm going to do that again, hooking through one that we had already woven through, and then hooking on to another. There's three, and then hooking through one that we had already woven through. Whoops, that happens, it's okay. Sometimes this stuff gets twisted around. It may be helpful to you to just remove it, reposition so that you're comfortable, and then hook through, start over. One that we had already woven through, boop, plus one, then close. And so that's the first row of our triangle. So now I'm going to move on to the next row. So we'll pick up an open one. I'm going to hook through two, boop and boop, like that, and close. I'm going to hook through one that we had already woven through, and then add on another, and close. And then I'm going to hook through one and two, and close. So you can kind of see how that is starting to taper down. And now the next row, more of the same. I'm going to hook through two. There's one and two, making sure that I'm only hooking through those two rings. And then I'm going to close. Like, you don't want to be hooking through the newest one and then another one, because things just aren't going to be laying quite right. You'll want to hook through in the previous row one that had already been woven through, plus another, and close. And then we're going to add our last one, boop, just through those last two. This is an excellent opportunity if you wanted to add like a little teardrop or a charm or something. This would be the ring to do it on, because we could add like little fringes across all of this. Again, we'll get into stuff like that in future tutorials, but that is how we do, one way at least, of adding a little triangle. So now we can try, let me scooch that up just a hair. An alternate method is to this next one. That one was 4 for the base row, so I'm going to do 5. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now on each of these, I'm going to close a ring and put it on there, and then one closed on each except for the last. 3, to a total of 4 though. So it was a row of 5 open, and then we do 4 closed, and now we're going to do 3 open. So there's 1, oops, 2, and 3. And now the next row would have been 2, but we're going to do those closed. So there's 1, and there's 2. It's all technically the same number of rings, whichever way you weave it. I just find this to be, I'm doing more work in the setup here where it's easy for me because it's just a flat table, as opposed to, rolling around on the project. So now, okay, let's see, can we do this? We are going to pick up our 1 ring with 1 closed on it. I'm skipping this guy right here, just for the sake of spacing. And then I'm gonna go boop and boop. So I've hooked through 2. And I'm gonna close. So you kind of see how that's hanging down like that. And then I'm going to pick up another ring, 1 open with 1 closed on it. And I want to hook through this one down here, plus 1 and 2. and then close. Now this can be much trickier, and if you're having trouble with it, by all means do the other method where you're just adding it one ring at a time. But I think it's important to show you guys that there are options, and now you can see how that's sitting, kind of repeating the extension of the pattern. And I'm hooking through that one, and then 1, 2. I find it much easier to twist the project around to suit my hand position than to be like twisting my hand position around in a bunch of ways that are uncomfortable and clumsy. So I'm going to hook through that one, and then one that was already woven through plus one more. And then we have this last one that we just hook through one there, and then hooking through one that was already woven through plus one more. And that is the end of our first row on this triangle. You could also, if there were one on each and every, do this just as an expansion layer to, you know, make, if you wanted to encase the entire cup, you could kind of just build it row by row by row. Would be a pretty cool way of doing it. So now I have open with a closed, and I'm going to hook through 1 and 2, and I'm going to close it, and I'm going to pick up and open with a closed, and hook through 1, 2, 3, well, 1 on the bottom and then 2 on the top, just like how we have. Kind of, that ring isn't quite laying correctly right there, so I'm just going to take them and sometimes just tapping it a bit can help it get settled into place. And then I'm going to take 1 through the bottom like that, and then 1, 2, and close. And then I'm going to take 1, hook through 1, 2, and close. And so there are 2 pennants. Now you could have done any combination. You could just do a bunch of tiny little, you know, maybe instead of 4 for the base row, you could have done 3 and then repeated that all the way around. But this is what I had experimented and found was evenly spaced, and I liked the look of it. So this is just the way that I have done this. Please, please, please feel free to experiment and get wild with it and try all sorts of different things. Something that would look really cool on this other than just dangles or a fringe, you could do a chain fringe. You could do chains hanging in little drapes with stuff hanging down very far, with it like cupped behind it with like one big crystal hanging down. All sorts of stuff, y'all. And we will be getting into more intricate designs later on. You could also do little triangles going up and have your chain attached to that. So I do have over here somebody once told me, no, some more little triangles set up, and this is a way that Randy is often helpful to me. I did have to, oh, such neglect. I did have to open all of my own, open and close all of my own rings today, but that's okay. I'll survive. But oftentimes Randy will come through and he'll help me out on projects by having things set up on a little portable work surface like this, and that way I can just sit here and just weave, and he just gets it all prepped together. So if you have a buddy who likes being your ring jockey, you can hopefully enlist them in that. So again, we'll be skipping a ring and then hooking through, and I don't know if I should keep doing this in real time with y'all, or if you would rather just me jump forward, but I'm gonna do, I don't know, we'll see. I'm gonna do at least a row so you can see how it's looking. And I just pick up the ring, hook through. It does help tremendously to be already pretty familiar with weaving the European 4-in-1. So you may want to start with just popping out a couple of bracelets, or maybe some earrings or circlets or anklets, or just however however you feel inspired. So we did another triangle with 4 as the base row. And so we're going to come in here and do, there's that one. I just love the sound. The sounds of chainmail. It's so tactile. And then I had it set up where it's 2 triangles of 4 and now 2 triangles of 5. So pick it up, skipping a ring. 1, 2. And closing it. Now also I personally always try to do my best, but if you're gonna be messy or lazy on your ring closures, a piece like this, it's not the end of the world if you're not having the most perfect of closures. Anybody who's up close enough to be petting your chainmail can kind of mind their own business if they're a bit of a chainmail snob. But aside from just being nice and smooth whenever you have good closures, it does lend itself to the longevity of your piece if there's a lot of movement, because if you have 2 rings that are poorly closed right next to each other, and if they can, they will shift around to where those openings line up with each other, and they can sometimes break apart. That happens a little less in something that's just hanging there, but if there is a lot of movement going on, it's just something to keep in mind. But again, find a balance between seeking perfection and just getting the project done. Sometimes it's just nice to just do a piece that was like, this was fun. It doesn't have to be your best award-winning work every single time you craft something. Craft for the joy of crafting, not just for, the end result. If that's what you're going for. We all craft for different reasons, I think. And then hooking that one through the last 2. But it certainly is easier to fix your rings, like to fix your closures as you're going, than it is to go back after the fact and try to, pinpoint which ring it is that has the pokey bit. So building a foundation of good habits can get you really far, I think. At least I wish I had built foundations of good, or I don't know, words are hard. I wish I had built good habits from the beginning instead of having to learn the hard way that I should check my closures as I go. But it's all been just a wonderful time, I think. And you can pet it. My eyesight is not what it used to be, so I do a whole lot more petting of my projects than I used to. Because you can kind of feel, if it's good. Now, if you've coiled and cut your own pieces, or you do want a perfectly silky smooth chainmail experience, on pieces like this where they have something set in them, I would recommend tumbling the rings before you have woven them. Typically on my projects, if it's like a jewelry piece or something, I'll just weave the whole thing and then tumble it. And I use a rotary tumbler and stainless steel shot and sunsheen burnishing compound. And the stainless steel shot, what happens is whenever these rings are cut, it's with a jeweler's saw, so there might be a little burr of metal just where that closure is, and that can get a little pokey sometimes. And so whenever you tumble your work, it can go a long way in rubbing that down, or burnishing it off, and giving you a very nice satiny smooth chainmail. Also, if you're using like copper or bronze or sterling silver or something, and it's oxidized and you want it to be nice and bright again, tumbling is perfect for that, I have found. But again, if there's gemstones involved, or if you are using components that are plated, like if you have copper head pins and you've attached some glass beads to add some pretty color, but the copper has been plated to make it look silver toned, that will not hold up in your tumbler, unfortunately. At least that never has in mine. but glass holds up pretty well too. Some beads, if it's a softer gemstone, may not hold up well to the burnishing compound or to the abuse of being plummeted or pummeled with stainless steel shot over and over again, like turquoise, malachite, anything like that doesn't do that great. So you may need to do a little bit of disassembly before you put your pieces in to tumble. But again, if you guys have any questions about that, leave them down below and I'll try my best to help you out. Also, I usually tumble my work for about 3 hours at least. So that may be a question people ask. So there is our little skirt, which you could do just this part, not on anything, and then take it and like drape it over a crystal or a wine bottle or just whatever you have and just be like, behold, it's pretty. But yeah, and so now I do have this written out. This is, so if you want to screenshot this, it might be a little bit of a guide, but this is kind of the pattern. Ignore that little scribbly guy in the corner. This is the pattern that we did. So a little bit of shorthand of just each of those little C's or backwards C's is a chainmail ring. Just showing how I wove it together. It's 39 units around in 18 gauge 3/16. Now for the chain that I have coming off of here, if you have your chain only comes out this far before it binds together, that may be very close to where the candle flame is, and it may tarnish your metal with like lamp black and make it get all sooty. So I've found, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 inches away from where the tip of your candle flame might be is far enough that I haven't had any problems with lamp black. Not that it would be troublesome if it were there. I mean, it is metal, it'll be fine, but I just don't like having to clean my candle holders. So if I could avoid having to, you know, use a scrub brush and stuff and burnish off any soot, well, wouldn't that be nice? So and then I do have an additional 5 or 6 inches of chain that I've woven even further beyond, to keep it from, if I'm hanging this from whenever we're camping, I like to hang them from my Easy Up canopy frame, and it just puts the candle flame far enough away that you don't have to worry about any heat or anything. But also, please do be careful. Fire, it is fire and it'll do what fire do, but we are flammable and made of meat, you know, tread carefully. But yeah, so fire safety aside, and also you could use like LED candles and stuff. So, or even just putting a little bit of like, we actually use the scrap wood from our laser cutouts on our Glowforge and put like citronella and lemongrass and stuff on that and hang it just as a potpourri. You know, so it doesn't even have to be, you know, lit, and that way you can leave, you know, something that's just sitting there smelling unsupervised, whereas, you know, if it's a fire, you should never do that. So these are the ring sizes that I'm using for this chain, which is a very simple 1-1 chain, or 1-2 chain, because there's 1 ring and then 2 rings, then 1 ring and then 2 rings. So just for the rundown, and these are all available in this kit. So I'm actually going to be picking them. Now these are joined together all the way up for the 3 segments that we're going to be using, with the 18 gauge 3/16, but we start with 2 of the 16 gauge 7/16, which you can see there on the inside of our lid. Very handy. So we have 2 of those, and I'm doing 3 lengths of this, so I'm getting out enough to do 3. And then we have 2 of the 16 gauge 3/8. Just like that. And then we have 5 of the 16 gauge 5/16 ring. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just setting this up like so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I have 4 of the 16 gauge 1/4 inch. One, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not the right size. There we go. And then for the chain, which is a 2/2 chain, because each of these guys, there's 3 of them sharing the load, but from here up, they're all bearing, this is bearing the full load of the piece all together. So you can see I have 2 rings, loop through 2 rings, loop through 2 rings, loop through 2 rings, and then a key ring on the end. That didn't come with the kit. I kind of found it on the ground. So you could make like a big hook out of the old clothes hanger, or you can have a little carabiner for clipping it onto things. But this is, to whatever length that you would like, 16 gauge 1/4 inch, which it looks like I need to get more of. And again, these are just the ring sizes I'm using, so you could use something else. But there's 16 gauge 1/4 inch, and then 16 gauge 3/16, which is similar to this but thicker. So it's just the next gauge up. So I'm just picking some of those out. I have more of the 16 gauge 1/4 inch in a drawer somewhere from Chainmaille Joe. So closing that, setting it off to the side. So now the way that I personally like to do this is I'm just going to close a whole bunch of these 18 gauge 3/16. You could also just as easily use split rings. I don't typically use split rings in my jewelry because I don't like the way it feels on my skin, but I do love split rings for projects like this where you want something structural. And I mean, unless somebody's wearing a candle holder as a necklace, you're not really going to have to worry about it, you know, prolonged discomfort against your skin. But that using split rings kind of removes this whole step that we're doing right here. And I'm doing 2 for each unit. Again, a perfect project for if you're watching a show in the background or talking with a friend. There we go. And then we're going to pick up 1 ring to rule them out. And then I'm going to hook on 2 and close it. And then I'm going, so I want to go down and have this whole row just be open. Okay, I realized I was out of frame on that, but you get the idea. So now we have open ring, hook through those 2 closed, add 2 more closed, and close. It is just a whole lot of opening and closing rings. Hooking through those 2, adding 2, and close. Isolating those 2, and so you can see that's making just a nice flat chain. Hooking through those 2, adding 2, and close. And I am just going to do this same thing for the full length of all 3 of these suspension chains that we're doing. Just hooking through, adding 2, and close. So again, through the magic of editing, I'll meet you guys right back here when I have this woven into 3 lengths of chain. Okay, so we have everything set up. Hopefully I don't drop my pliers on it again. And I'm just going to come through and weave these guys together. Just hooking through. And I'm doing this real time with y'all because sometimes you just don't know how things are going to go disastrously wrong. But it is okay to embrace the disaster and just sort of figure it out and troubleshoot, because the more you kind of mess up while crafting, like this is something that we're not looking for right there. That's not saying it's not, a good thing. We could do that consistently and it might look pretty cool. It's just not what we're going for right now. But the more you expose yourself to chainmail, the more experience you get, the more you'll be able to anticipate or even recognize, oh, this happened, and how to fix it. So patience, patience, patience. Patience and practice will get you where you're going. So just hooking through, giving a nice good closure, hopefully. And also sometimes if a ring just is not closing well, sometimes you gotta trash rings. Because like this one right here looks to have been the end of a coil, so it's not a complete ring. So if you're fiddling about and trying to get that to close nicely, you may have some trouble with it. So sometimes if nothing else is working, just put that ring down and try something else. And if you're trying a different ring and it works just fine, then bury that ring in your backyard and salt the bones. Or something that might be a little extreme, but you do you. Now on this design for our chain, I am putting 2 of our smaller rings on the end because I kind of want to show you how we assemble this. So there is our second chain, and you don't have to do that tapered. That was purely a design choice. I just like it. So you could just do the same ring size. Like if you only wanted to invest in one ring size, I'd recommend the 18 gauge 3/16 because you can get this and then you could just build off of it. So you can do a whole lot with that ring size. I find it's great for decor pieces like this as well as jewelry, even being integrated into like wire wrapped jewelry and stuff as well. So it's a very versatile ring size for me. You may prefer something a bit bigger or something a bit smaller in your own work, but I thought this was a really fun way of kind of showing off what can be done with this American chainmail kit. Now Chainmail Joe also has a kit that has a broader ring selection, but it's a little bit more expensive, but you do get what you pay for and it's totally worth it. And I love it because it's a great, even for, myself and Randy, we've been weaving chainmail for over a decade now, and we're kind of set in our ways sometimes. So sometimes, it's like, well, we always just keep purchasing these size of rings, so we keep just using that size of ring. And it can, be really nice and expand our boundaries and horizons a little bit to try out some different ring sizes that we normally wouldn't have kept in stock. And doing a little sampler kit like that is a perfect way of trying out new things. And then I don't know how many times I've refilled some of the compartments in this American chainmail sampler, just because it's really nice that instead of keeping bags or little tins of all of the different ring sizes that I like to use, I just have them all in one place that I can then refill as necessary. Okay, so we have our 3 chains for extension, and then I'm going to also go ahead and weave our final length of extension chain. Maybe. I think before we do that, you can do the center of your big triangle. I prefer the center of my little triangle because these 3 rings, like if you follow this ring up, it's the middle, middle, middle. So this one it just sits kind of in the middle of the whole spiral. So I'm going to hook through 1, 2, 3, those 3 rings with the large ring on the end of our chain. So I'm going to open it like so, and then hook through 1, 2, 3, like that, and then I'm going to close it. So that is how that sits. Did I do that correctly? Yeah, I think so. Okay, so now we're going to rotate around, and I'm going to take our next length of chain. I'm going to open up the end, and I'm going to hook yeah, 1, 2, 3, just like that. And this positioning was my aesthetic and my choice. You may have decided that you like it attached between the triangles. So the only reason I did it like this is because I liked the way it looks, which I think is reason enough. But the point I'm trying to make is do what you like the way it looks on your piece. So, okay, coming up the middle. So we're gonna go 1, 2, and 3. Then we're gonna close it. There we go. And then I'm just letting them hang down because I want to join these in a way that they're not twisted. And we're going to do this with one of our 16 gauge 1/4 inch rings. So I'm just grabbing this piece, pulling it to the end with no twisting, grabbing this other piece, pulling it to the end, making sure that there's no twisting, and I'm just hooking through so that they're sitting side by side. And this is something that may take a little bit of tweaking. That is okay. And now I'm going to take this third side, pull it straight out, making sure there are no twists, and I'm going to hook onto this ring. And there's going to be a little bit of a twist. Do you see how this one is twisting on us? I don't like that. Let's see. Maybe we can... Nope, that's the exact same as what I just did, isn't it? So maybe... Nope, that's even worse twist. So don't hesitate to experiment. Ah, okay. So I got it hooked on there. It's a little bit weird in the middle, but that'll make it sit kind of correctly. And then hooking through, that one's got a bit of a twist. try hooking it the other way. And I think I like it okay. So it's, if we've attached, if these are the rings and this is the big ring that they're all attached to, we've kind of dipped it so that it's like this. So almost like a tripod. So, or like that. So that's not the most important part, but I want it as laying as flat as possible. So that's the process I go through to kind of fiddle about until I give up and decide it is what it is. Then I've added on the 2 smaller rings, which are 16 gauge 3/16, and closed that one ring. So you can see how there's one going through all of those. So now I'm going to grab up another of our 16 gauge 1/4 inch, hook through those 2, and then coming around, I'm hooking through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of our 18 gauge 3/16 that were the finishing pieces on these chains. Now, before I go much further, I'm double checking to make sure that everything is hanging the way that I want it to. And if it's a little weird, embrace the weird. Yeah, this one's quite harumph. Well, you know, and maybe we'll make it twisty on purpose. How about that? But no, this one does have a pretty bad twist in it. So I'm actually going to, instead of messing about at the top, just open up this ring, twist it so that it is laying correctly, and then reconnect along our chain. Chainmail has oftentimes been very, very difficult for me, if because of no other reason than just that I make things more complicated than they need to be. So, but if I can do it, you can do it. So now from here, we are going to just hook, doing our 2-2 chain or 2-4 chain, just depending who you're talking to. I am making sure that on each link, the rings are doubled up. So I've put on our larger ring, added 2 of our smaller ring, and now I'm going to double up, hook through 2, hook through 2, and close. And I will continue this until we have reached the full length that I would like to achieve, which for me was 13 or 12. It was 12 rings of the large. So 12 of these doubled, 12 of these doubled. Hooking through, 1, 2. And this is basically it, y'all. Let me know down in the comments what you would like to see future tutorials on. If you have any design ideas or questions that you'd like demonstrated, I'd love to be helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, leave them down in the comments or send them to us in an email at backtoearthcreations@yahoo.com. If you enjoy our free tutorials and would like to support the creation of more of them, please feel free to subscribe. It's free. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at our website, backtoearthcreations.com, where we send out new shop updates. Whenever we release a new tutorial, we send out an email to let folks know if we're having a premiere, a live stream, anything like that. All of that information gets sent out in our newsletter. We try to not be spammy, but we do post quite a few times through the week. We have new tutorials every Thursday and Sunday that are free here on YouTube. So we do hope that we can be helpful to you guys. We do new shop updates every Monday. And if you join our Craft Along Club, you get first access to our shop updates. Like we send out an email to all of our Craft Along Club members the moment we get the shop updated, and then we send out an email to everybody whenever we're having the premiere. So you kind of get first dibs on that, as well as some exclusive coupons and behind the scenes content and all sorts of different stuff. Links to everything like that are down in the video description. If you're interested in what's going on behind the scenes, or what's growing in our garden, or our most recent adventures with camping and different things like that, please check out our Vonster vlog, which is, well, our vlog. So I'm going to keep doing this, but until next time, y'all, thank you so much for hanging out, and happy crafting. Mwah. Bye.